What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Kakis, and today we are going to be showcasing a new exotic catalyst that was added into Destiny 2 with the release of the Final Shape expansion. However, this exotic catalyst is not for a Final Shape exotic, or even an Episode 1 Echoes exotic, or even an exotic that came out in the past couple of seasons. It's actually for an exotic weapon that released all the way back for the Lightfall Expansion, the Final Warning exotic sidearm. So what the heck does this new Final Warning catalyst actually do, and how much better does it make that exotic? Well, let's get started. Now, first things first, how do you actually acquire this new exotic catalyst? Well, it's going to randomly drop from the end of ritual activities. So I got mine from the end of a strike, you might get yours from the end of a crucible match, or if you're one of the 12 people that still play Gambit, you might get it at the end of a Gambit match. I kid. There's gotta be at least 20 of you. Okay, so once you have acquired the exotic catalyst, you will have to get a bunch of kills with the Final Warning in order to be able to equip it. So let's go over what the Final Warning actually does so you can understand the effects of the catalyst. So intrinsically, it has the trait All at Once. Holding down the trigger marks targets within range and loads multiple bullets, which fire in a burst with increased stability on trigger release. Hitting a marked target with a fully charged burst will unravel them because, of course, this is a strand weapon. It also has another unique trait called Pick Your Poison. So it says, for hip firing, projectiles will track marked targets, dealing increased body shot damage on impact, and then for aiming, projectiles have greatly increased velocity and deal extra critical hit damage to newly marked targets. Make no mistake, the Final Warning is one of the most unique exotic weapons in the game. Like, it does not really behave like most other sidearms, or frankly, any other sidearm. The closest thing would kind of be the Devil's Ruin, another charge-up exotic sidearm. However, the tracking system of the Final Warning is crazy. The amount that the bullets will curve to hit that marked target is wild. People have looked straight up in the air over a Titan barricade, for example, and still hit targets that were marked. So definitely the Final Warning can do some pretty wild things. However, it's also a bit difficult to use. Like, the charge up time can be pretty relentless, especially if you are going for the full charge to actually unravel targets. And yes, it can do a massive amount of damage after you've charged it. So when you actually factor in that charge time, the damage isn't quite as impressive, but again, it's an extremely unique exotic, and the guaranteed unravel at a full charge definitely has some incredible strand synergies. So what does the new exotic catalyst do? Well, importantly, it just straight up makes this thing better, because it says hits against marked targets deal increased damage and have a chance to refund ammo to the magazine. So, first of all, the fact that this catalyst increases damage is a huge deal. I mean, it's a huge deal when you can increase the damage for any weapon out there, but specifically for the Final Warning, as I alluded to earlier, it takes a lot of setup, but a full burst against a marked target while aimed down sights is going to deal some of the highest damage for any primary weapon in the entire game. Like, you will absolutely nuke targets if you can keep your sights over their crit after doing a full charge. It is pretty crazy, and then you're going to start unraveling and things will get even crazier. So any damage increase is a huge deal. But what are the actual values? So here is the damage of the Final Warning before the catalyst, and this is versus marked targets. So against a non-marked target, it will be less, but the catalyst only increases the marked target damage. So normally, hip fire, and that's going to deal 9,316 damage for that boosted body shot. Then, if you aim down sights, that's going to deal 21,767 damage, which again is a crazy value. Now, after you equip the catalyst, the new values are for hip fire, 10,248 damage, and then for aim down sights, 23,944 damage. Now, both of these are going to equate to 10% more damage than the original non-catalyst versions. So it's kind of like getting Rampage ×1 all the time against marked targets. And that's nothing to scoff at. Like 10% is nothing absolutely massive, but again, it's just straight up 10% more damage out of thin air. If you already enjoyed using the final warning and you thought it did a lot of damage before the catalyst, it's just literally going to deal more damage now. And so obviously it's just a strict upgrade, and it is just going to make the payoff of that big charge time and then having to mark targets much more worth it. However, there's the second half of this catalyst, and that is returning ammo. And the effect of that is what you can see right here. Here's like the best example I have. I am shooting this yellow bar and I never need to reload. This guy dies before I ever do a reload animation. And normally you have 20 rounds in the magazine before the catalyst, right? You have 20 rounds and a full burst is 10 rounds. So you have 2 full bursts, then you're reloading. Now you can almost go infinite. The chance to return is basically a guarantee. The problem is that it's really only going to work noticeably on more powerful targets like yellow bars, because those are the targets where all 10 rounds will actually impact that one individual marked target to give you those rounds back. If you're shooting red bars, and you can see this quite a bit, yeah, there's gonna be, 3, maybe even 4 marked targets, but then that means you get 3 or 4 rounds back because they're all killed in, 1 shot, maybe 2 from this thing. And even though you can mow down a group of red bars, remember it's only going to refund the ammo for that marked target. So you can have 1 marked thrall, and then you mow down that guy and 9 thrall behind him, you get 1 round back. And that is the downside of this, is that again, it's really only extremely noticeable when you are fighting more powerful targets that can soak up an entire burst. So that can be pretty crazy. The fact that you can mark a target and that target will stay marked, as long as it's not dead. And then you can be pumping, unraveling burst after burst after burst into that target, doing again a significant amount of damage. However, there's actually some downsides to this perk. And that is the fact that, when you're trying to do a full burst, again, it's 10 rounds. And so you can do a full burst, and then let's say you do another full burst and you get 5 rounds back. Well, then your next burst is never going to be a full burst. It's just going to be a 5-round burst, and so you won't unravel. Also, you can get into some weird scenarios like you see right here. This is like some crazy gameplay. Look at what's happening. I have 1 round left, and I keep getting a precision hit, so it keeps refunding the 1 round I have left. So you just get into these weird situations sometimes where you're like, what is the point of this? I'm missing out on a full burst and I'm just regenning the 1 singular round I have. Yes, I could manually reload at this point, of course, but again, it just kind of makes the whole process of this weapon a bit weird. Whereas before, if you're using it before the catalyst, you're just used to it automatically reloading when you're out of ammo. Now, you will sometimes get some disadvantageous bursts where it only bursts 2 rounds when you would have rather it just reloaded and topped you back up, right? So that is the weird downside, just a little bit of getting used to for sure. And that brings us to the question of, is this catalyst good? And more importantly, does it make the final warning really good? Well, I think overall, if you're someone who enjoyed the final warning, and maybe you haven't used it in a while, after Lightfall, and you get the catalyst, 100% whip it back out, because it's just straight up doing more damage, and now it has that crazy capability of just bursting after bursting after bursting 1 singular target without needing to reload. That is pretty darn cool. The weird burst thing, again, maybe it's a little getting used to, but it's not that big of a downside. But does it dramatically change the final warning enough to warrant this suddenly becoming meta or something? I would say no. This weapon does have potential. It does do a lot of damage, but man, there is setup. And just so many enemies will untarget themselves. A Minotaur is a perfect example. You have a Vex Minotaur teleporting and going invisible, and then it untargets itself and it has to reacquire that target. So there's just certain enemies where this weapon sucks against, and that is obviously a major downside. And additionally, just primaries have come such a long way. Even more recently, the Red Death is going to heal you. It's phenomenal. The Graviton Lance is busted right now. There's so many phenomenal primaries that a weapon like the Final Warning with so much setup that is definitely not anywhere near the ease of use as something like the Graviton, where you just shoot it and enemies blow up, right? Like, that is definitely a significant downside. However, again, with strand synergies, especially because you do have that guaranteed unravel for getting the full burst, well, we do have Prismatic, and there is absolutely strand synergies in there as well. There's benefits for getting unravel in those subclasses as well. And so if you do acquire the Catalyst, maybe it is worth trying out the Final Warning once again. Guys, that is going to be it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickKakis, that is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.